Hello, and welcome to the first edition of a new show where we'll be catching up with the good and the great of the gaming industry to find out how companies across the sector are utilizing multimedia content. My name is Christian Lee, business journalist for Gambling TV, and today it is my pleasure to welcome Daniel Zimmermann, the CEO and founder of First Fantasy, to the show. Thanks for joining us, Dan. How are you today?
Thanks, Christian. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to talk to you guys.
As we'll sort of learn later on, Verse Fantasy has been making waves in the US, so perhaps my next question is more for our European audience who may not be as familiar with fantasy sports in the US. Can you give us a bit of a rundown about Verse Fantasy and what you guys are doing?
For sure. So, I think whether you're in the US or in Europe, fantasy sports is something you've come across. I know in Europe it's much more popular with, soccer, or as you guys would call fantasy football. But, for the US, fantasy football is really just such a cultural movement, you could almost say. Every year around this time, people, friend groups, office leagues all start to coagulate around this idea of beating each other in a fake sport. And so fantasy sports in the US, really football is the number one. And what we're doing with Verse is giving users the ability to, risk and win money on their fantasy teams that they care so much about, right? So people put a lot of hours into drafting their team, into fine-tuning their team, into trying to trade with their friends. But it's also that they, in the end, can beat their friends. So what we built was a platform to allow you to actually put money down and win real money in these head-to-head style contests, giving you a bit of a more sports betting experience in a fantasy sports package. And that's really what Verse Fantasy does.
I know that in the past you've described Verse Fantasy as sort of DFS 3.0. Can you sort of talk a little bit more about what is DFS 3.0 in your eyes and sort of a bit more on how your product differs from other fantasy providers?
Yeah, so DFS 1.0 is really in reference to the DraftKings, the FanDuels, some smaller companies like Star Street, where they really invented the category of real money daily fantasy with the intention of giving you something that was more instant gratification than a season long tournament that you play with your friends. And so that product remains very popular today. And what we saw in 2018 after the repeal of PASPA, which is the regulation that was preventing states from approving gambling within their own borders, when that was repealed, we saw not only an explosion of sports betting companies, but also an explosion of what is called DFS 2.0 by many in the industry. And these products often replicated a sports betting experience packaged in a fantasy wrapper. Many of these companies have been challenged on how exactly they define their fantasy sports versus sports betting. And what we've seen is a lot of states, now up to 14 states, have re-regulated and cut out a lot of the DFS 2.0 products that we are familiar with. So when I say DFS 3.0, I'm really talking about the next wave, the next, what gets innovated after these 2.0. And I think Verse is, we're trying to lead the charge with this DFS 3.0. And in many ways, it's a throwback to the original concept of daily fantasy, because for, specifically with Versus League Sync product, you're literally putting money down on your fantasy team to score more fantasy points than the other team, right? It's a pretty traditional, straightforward fantasy contest, getting away from some of the complexities of, a 100,000 entry pool or a 9-pick parlay like you can do on some of these other fantasy sites. So when I say DFS 3.0, it's almost like getting back to the basics, but we won't be the only company. We're certainly not the only company now that I would put in this category. I think there's a lot of companies that are trying out new and innovative ways to offer game styles and to entertain fans. So I think it really just describes what comes after the crop of 2.0 companies we've seen.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like really exciting stuff. Now, sort of moving on to the main reason why I want to speak to you today. In June, you launched Verse Media, and at the time described it as having the aim of expanding the digital and social brand of Verse Fantasy. What strategies have you focused on with Verse Media, and how successful has that been for you so far?
Yeah, so the entire thesis around verse media really ties into what we call subliminal marketing. What we mean by this is over the last 2 years, as I've been working to with my team get the app and the product in a place that we feel good about and release to everyone, we've been quietly building up serious followings on social media, specifically TikTok, where we have 32,000 followers, and Instagram, where we have 25,000 followers. And the reason we say subliminal marketing is because what we've done is we've baked our logo and in many times our branding into what you would really call meme style content. And these memes or these highlights or these, combinations of both have become one of our most go-to strategies to pursue virality on social. And what we've seen is by creating this content factory really of sports related, some oftentimes fantasy sports or betting related content, we are attracting the audience that we would like to sell the verse fantasy product to in a way that is very passive in the user's mind, right? They're seeing the verse fantasy name perhaps dozens of times before ever actually being told or promoted the app. And that is something that we believe gives us a lot of credibility, not overnight, but over a year or so, because, hey, I have some level of brand recognition with this company, so I'm going to be more inclined to check out the app. And Verse Media is really meant to capitalize on the success we've had there. We're coming off of 50 million views in the last 12 months on TikTok alone, 100 million on Instagram. So the numbers we're putting up are, I like to joke that if Verse Media didn't have an app and we were just a media company, we have raised $20 million because we're really good at doing the media side. But really the purpose of it is to serve as our own affiliate back into the Verse Fantasy app and create a flywheel that is sustainable and entirely in-house.
Yeah, there's some very impressive numbers there. And especially when you think about how in your face some operators use with their marketing. How do you think customers and potential customers react to the more passive style of marketing? Do you think that means that they're sort of more receptive to it because they don't feel like it's been forced onto them?
Yeah, I really think instead of every sponsored ad swiping through Instagram stories being the same company, and that's how a lot of these companies got me, is they knocked me, punched me over and over until I was like, all right, fine, I'll take the $50 deposit match and I'll check it out, right? And it's like, I think there's definitely benefits to that because as I just admitted, it worked. But I think for us, it's more of a by the time you hear about it, you've already heard about it, and that's kind of what we're going for here. So I think other companies, especially sports books, they're way more liquid than us. First of all, so they're having Jamie Foxx or Ben Affleck tell you, to bet on their platform and basically lose money to this company instead of that company, right? But with Verse, and due to the nature of our peer-to-peer gaming, like we can work with influencers, which you'll see this season, and you can actually play against your favorite influencer, right? So if we're doing a partnership with an influencer who puts out sports betting content and he or she puts out a contest on Verse, they can put a link in their tweet and says, hey, play against me. And that's something that you won't find on other platforms. So I think we have the opportunity to really break the fourth wall on social media. And that's something that you'll see this year with the Verse Creator League, where we're having 10 fantasy football influencers. We're talking about people with 50, 100, 200,000 followers playing directly against each other and against their fans on the Verse app. So I think we'll be able to showcase this concept much more in the next few weeks and months.
You mentioned TikTok. Now, one of your strategies with First Media is the nightly live streams that yourself and some other people host. And on LinkedIn, you posted some of the stats from them. I think one that I remember is that you peaked at over 1,000 concurrent live stream viewers on Verse Media, which sort of is higher than you would expect from the amount of followers you've got. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the success of the strategy and the thinking behind starting the live streams in the first place?
Yeah. So, I mean, for us, we discovered last season in our first season operating the product nationwide that, to get the word out there, it's an expensive process of advertising and promoting. But so what we did was we got on and streamed live to our followers and put the app as the background. And, what it did is it evokes questions about the app and it allows you to actually answer those instantly. So instead of seeing an ad or seeing a TikTok video passively through your feed and then saying, "Oh, that's cool, but maybe I don't understand how it works," you can just actually ask me right then and there. And so this has been our number one acquisition style because we are seeing in an hour-long live stream, we're seeing hundreds of signups on the Verse platform. And what this, I mean, it's not free, but it's as close to damn free as you're going to get in this industry when it comes to customer acquisition. So we feel that the live streams are unlocking something that is really powerful. And, we have different sort of themes for some of these live streams. Sometimes they're a little bit more engagement focused, conversational, trying to get the users and the viewers to drop a comment. And some of them, they're more promotional based, but that's the beauty is it really all blends together. I could be talking about fantasy football advice for 3 minutes, and then I throw a 30-second ad plug in for Verse, and it doesn't even feel like an ad because we're talking about fantasy football. We're talking about, the games. So we have really gone all in on this strategy. I think we're surpassed 200,000 live stream views over the summer. And that was with streaming three or so times a week. And so we're going to be streaming every single day, multiple times a day. And really, we hope it to just print users like we've seen in our past runs with it. And I think we're certainly not the only people in the space to be trying out live streaming. But when it comes to promoting a brand new product, I do think we are sort of leading that charge with this content style.
Definitely. And we all know TikTok that people's attention span these days are getting smaller and smaller. And in the post, you talked about the need to capture the viewer's attention within the first 3 seconds. What sort of tactics have you used to be able to utilize this and keep people's attention on your video?
Yeah, so a lot of times the prompt we'll have in the back is something like, name a random NFL player. And then we'll have like a list of like our favorite names that have been submitted on the live stream. And really, what motivates a live stream viewer is oftentimes what motivates a lot of people in life, which is, vanity. They want to be shouted out. They want their username read. They want their comment to be appreciated. And so what we'll often do is we'll hop on and we'll say, everyone name a random player. And we will see literally 100 comments in 30 seconds. Like, it is actually insane. And so that's a really quick way to grab someone's attention, is to really pull them into the content. You just can't do that with a video.
Yeah, I think a bit of a meme I've seen on social media recently is sort of around the fact that if you put some men in a room and ask them to name one of the sports people, we could go on for hours and hours before anyone gets bored. So I can understand why that's such an interesting, a good way of doing it.
Well, we can't say we created the meme, but I mean, we all of August we're doing this streams with thousands and thousands of viewers, and then all these memes have been posted the last couple of weeks. So I think people are taking notice of this. Obviously, that's true. You could do it with soccer players, you could do it with football players. I mean, guys just being guys, and so naming random players, I think on the stream sometimes we're like, your girlfriend thinks, what are you doing out, late night? Well, you're just on a TikTok live stream naming random football players. So.
Maybe you should just claim it. I would just say it's yours, and then you've got it. Then
Yeah.
So I know you don't want to give away all of your industry secrets, but what sort of plans do you have with Verse Media to sort of utilize it even more and make it more effective for marketing for Verse Fantasy?
Yeah, so I think the Verse Creator League and other promotions we do with affiliate influencers will really be routed through the Verse Media brand, obviously with the full end goal of converting to Verse Fantasy players, but it serves as a nice casing for us to work with a variety of companies, including companies that maybe a fantasy sports app wouldn't normally work with, by introducing content into sort of our output. But really the whole strategy is for Verse Media to be our own affiliate, right? And to build that flywheel, I was saying. So live streams I think are way more valuable than podcasts because you can see in real time if people are liking it or not. So I think we're not necessarily interested in recorded content, but I do think one thing we'll be trying out this year is kind of guest streams where we're bringing in influencers or bringing in athletes to do their own streams. And I think that's something that you'll see a lot of, and perhaps we can start a trend there. But really, the Verse Media brand, we'd like to look a lot like the Bleacher Report brand on social media, where it's a name you recognize. You know that you're going to be getting something out of following them, even if you never go and use the Bleacher Report app, right? I think 90% of people that follow Bleacher Report probably don't have the app. And when you're dealing with scale and attention spans, you might need 1 million views to get 1,000 users. That's actually the ratios we're working with. So you can never have too many views because you're always going to be fighting that sort of inflation rate of views to conversion.
Any teasers in terms of athletes you want to get involved on anyone you're speaking to at the moment?
Yeah, I can't really talk about who we're working on now, but our goal is to have recognizable faces across, former athletes, maybe in celebrities that aren't necessarily football players, but them from football. I think the opportunity for us to work with people and build fantasy football content, we're lucky because fantasy football is something that a lot of people can relate to, and you don't have to be Chad Ochocinco for people to be interested in hearing about your takes.
Yeah, that's all. Now, the other big news coming out of the Verse camp at the moment is that you managed to close a 1.1 million pre-seed funding round led by Frontstage Ventures. What does this funding mean for Verse Fantasy, and how will it allow you to develop going forward?
Yeah, so we're thrilled to have a great deal of valuable investors on board. This has been very much sort of a garage operation for a couple years, and being scrappy and being cost efficient, and we'll maintain all of those qualities. But it's really valuable to have people who have built their own businesses and seen success behind us, and so thrilled to have the round done. It's a difficult time to raise. It's always a difficult time to raise, but founders know when I say this particularly has been challenging. So we feel a nice mix of lucky and proud to have it done, and I think that moving forward, it allows us to take this season and make it a launch point rather than a data point, right? And so instead of trying to build on year-over-year growth that looks something like 100%, like from last year, 1,000% growth is obtainable, and based off what we've seen the last couple of weeks, it's we're on track for it. So I think it's going to accelerate everything, and I think by the this time next year, the team will be much more meaty, and the product will be a lot more extensive, and I think just you can upgrade everything when you're dealing with when you go from having no money to a lot of money. The impact is profound.
Yes, I can imagine. Now, just as we wrap things up, for people watching who want to know more about Verse, how can they find you? Where's the best place to look for you online?
Yeah, so I'd say my LinkedIn, just Daniel Zimmermann. The Verse Fantasy socials are all at Verse Fantasy across all platforms. So you can find us there. And then versegaming.com is, our central hub for the company. And obviously our mobile app is available on iOS called Verse Fantasy Sports if you want to check out the app there.
Perfect. So I'll finish off by saying thank you for joining us today. Definitely some really interesting stuff. And we can't wait to see what's next for yourself and Verse Fantasy. And we know that for whatever it is, you will be able to read all about it on Gambling TV.
Awesome. Thank you, Christian. And thank you for tuning in, everyone. Looking forward to this season, and we'll see you on Verse.